हाँ नहीं तेरा अब तो बंदा चाहती दर्द तो वो तो अच्छा अच्छा तो भूखी तो मत रहे, ज्यादा देर भूखी मत रहे। हाँ ये भूखो भी नहीं रहनो बात, या कुछ खा लिए। हाँ अच्छा ये बना रही है। हाँ 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 लगा, हाँ अच्छी लगेगा। हाँ हाँ
Morning, ma'am.
Good morning, Mr. Bhusnurmath. So I think we can, if we are good to start.
Yeah, I'm good.
Shall we?
Yeah. So, shall I start?
I think I'll just introduce you briefly and then
Sure.
I'll hand over to
That's why I asked.
Right. Okay. Good morning once again to all the worthy colleagues, faculty colleagues, as well as all my dear students. We have already had one round of the sessions for the day, and I am now welcoming you to the second session. Managing the business of banks. While we were thinking about banks as a major recruiter for students from marketing, finance, HR, and operations, the only one name which came to my mind was Mr. Bhusnurmath. Mr. Bhusnurmath, he is a commercial banker turned central banker turned money and bonds trader turned professor. Sir was former professor and dean at MDI Gurgaon and is currently an adjunct professor finance and banking at IMT Ghaziabad. As far as his qualifications are concerned, he has done his MBA from FMS New Delhi, CAIIB, that is Certified Associate of Indian Institute of Bankers, and an MSc from Bangalore University in physics. He has had an extremely interesting journey, a professional journey which started with State Bank of India as an officer. He went on to become an officer at Reserve Bank of India and its subsidiary DHFI, I think a long number of years ago. And that is where I met him for the first time in the Discount Finance House of India, the subsidiary of Reserve Bank of India. Currently, he is a member of the board level Committee on Risk Management at PNB, member of the Promotion Board of the Oriental Bank of Commerce and Union Bank of India, member of the Strategic Committee of Power Finance Corporation Limited. He is a member of the jury for Business Today Awards of the Best CFO. He is also a member of the jury for Economic Times West Bengal Business Awards. And he is a visiting faculty in various management institutes, including IIM Sambalpur, IIM Ranchi, IIFT, Thapar University, LM Thapar School of Management, and Great Lakes, Gurgaon. I would like to, on behalf of Aditya Institute of Management Studies and Research, extend a very hearty welcome to you, sir. And it's a very big honor to have you coming and addressing our students today. So all over to Professor Bhusnurmath. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sunita Srivastava, and nice introduction. This is the nicest part of coming for such functions. Thank you very much. And I think I should, anyway, I understand there are faculty. So good morning, all the faculty currently here in the group. And good morning to all the students. Before I start, since yesterday was the Guru Purab, I must inform all the audience that it was Dr. Sunita Srivastava who took me on to this teaching journey. Long back, I had given a speech
I'm really
like this. Yeah, it has been. If you recall, you had called me for a similar function, which was called the Personality Development Program in the institute you were teaching. And you said, why don't you teach full courses? So I love talking. I love teaching. So that started the journey. And it has been a very interesting journey because I've been teaching for now about 20 years, as visiting, as adjunct, as full-time, etc. So since faculty is there, I would like to warn the faculty that what I'm going to discuss today is likely to be very basic, especially if you are from the economics or from the finance and banking side. But I would also like to take this opportunity because I am a very old man, you can see that. I am 66 years old and I have seen enough, or maybe I have a lot to see again, more. What I wanted to say was the intention is to tickle the imagination and make the faculty and the students think. It's a very difficult job to think. It is even more difficult to make people think. So getting down, my discussion would be basically, as you can see the slide, it is, before I proceed, anytime anybody can unmute themselves and ask me a question, there is no problem. Otherwise, in this mode, I think I may not be able to see your hands, but in between periodically, I'll check out if there's any hand raised and I will answer those questions. Otherwise, I think time has been allotted towards the end for question answers. I can take any questions on anything either connected with this or anything connected with management or how to make the best of the courses that you are going to have. To start with, since the students are the second year students, as I understand, you will be now starting a journey of electives. So you will be trying to specialize in some field or the other. Keep it in your mind that this specialization is the beginning of a journey, but the journey goes on and you are going to be managers, and there is no such thing as specific area manager. You are going to manage businesses. So what do managers do? Managers do, just a minute. Okay. So managers, what do they do? This is a very old theory. They do planning, organizing, staffing, leading, controlling. And so managers should know everything about the products, the customers, the customer relationship, value propositions, channel of delivery, key resources, partners, network, supply chain, revenue streams, and expenses. I've put the finance part of it at the end. It doesn't mean that it is not very relevant, nor does it mean that the products are the only one. All these are very important. And if you want to run a business, if you want to manage a business, you need to pay attention to all these. So to be an effective manager, one needs to know what the business is all about. I'm starting with this brief introduction on what managers do because business is a very holistic view that we need to take. There is this slide I'm very keen on discussing with you people, because this is also part of the introduction. This is in an organization. As you grow in an organization, you will notice that you will start your journey here and you will go to be the CEO or whatever high level position you would like to take. What do you need to know? There are two types of skills that a manager or anybody can have. One is the technical skills, like for example, shop floor, how to run the machines, how to see the quality control, etc., etc. In the case of finance, it would be about how to buy, when to buy, how to sell, etc., etc. So these technical skills are important, but this is a graph. When you start your journey, you need very high technical skills and not much of conceptual skills are required here. But as you grow in an organization, you will find that you will require more and more. Somewhere down, let's say halfway through the ladder, you will need this much of technical skills. You will be using so much of skills, but not this much. This is when you begin. But your conceptual skills should be very high. And when you end up as the big boss in the organization, you will be using mainly conceptual skills. And therefore, I am going to address today how to get these conceptual skills rather than the technical skills. This will depend on your curiosity. You will depend on how you go about looking at things, learning from others, etc., etc. These can be taught, these can be learned. Okay, banking can be discussed as an institution, as an intermediary between savers and investors from macroeconomic point of view, or as regulations governing the banks. All these are very popular because it is not, people have not been applying the management knowledge to banks. But look at banking as a business. It is, their companies have been set up to do banking business. So we will see what this banking business means, what it is, and how to manage this. And remember, banks have been set up with a profit motive. Every bank has to make a profit. Therefore, what's banking? Let's start with what is this? We need to know what is banking. One warning to all, even faculty and the other students who are there. There's a lot of confusion, or each one has his own theory about what banking is. So I will start with the legal point that is there. Banking has been defined in the Banking Regulation Act. It means that banking means accepting for the purpose of lending, of deposits of money from public, repayable on demand. Please remember this repayable on demand. We will get back to that. Or otherwise, and withdrawable by check, draft, order, otherwise. This was in 1949, and we had not thought of things like online transfer and all that. That online transfer, etc., comes in this otherwise. It has not been changed. It is sufficient. This is one of the best definitions of banking in the world. And so in this discussion, bank means a commercial bank, not an investment bank or a private bank. There are a lot of definitions what these are. I won't get into that. You will study all these in other courses that they come along. Therefore, managing a bank would essentially be managing the balance sheet of a bank, and so we need to understand what is the balance sheet of a bank. So to understand, let us start a bank. Okay, and what does this do? To understand, let's start a bank. Let's also assume, this is very important for our discussions. Let's also assume that there are no regulation whatsoever. Please remember, especially the students, I would like to remind you, learn a business as though there are no regulations. Then you will understand why regulations are there, and you will also know how to obey them and how to use these regulations to your own benefit. So the regulations lay down a perimeter within which banks can function. Remember this, but right now we don't have Reserve Bank, we don't have any regulation, and we can see why RBI regulates and relax these assumptions as we go. How do we start a bank? We set up a bank. Okay, good. To set up a bank, we need to set up a company. As you all know, you're all second year students. So a bank, it is called a banking company. How do you do it? Very briefly, you have to have your memorandum and articles of association, registration, board of directors, etc. And you bring in the capital. We'll start with bringing in the capital from the promoters to start with, and then make an IPO if required. This is how banks are started. Promoters bring in capital. So, if promoters bring in capital, the next question is, where do we keep this amount? A large amount is brought. We'll not go into how much, etc. right now. Where do we keep this amount raised as equity capital? Just give me a minute. I still don't understand. Okay. Can I take 1 minute? This is Dr. Sunita, can you tell me, can I take a minute? Yeah, there. I would like to ask, is anybody able to hear me?
Yeah, you're audible. Would you want to share a presentation?
Oh, yeah, right. Just a minute. I was sharing the presentation. Yeah. I think there's something happened. There's some technical difficulty. Yeah, right now I am sharing. I wish. Yeah. Can you see the presentation now?
It's just coming. Yeah, it has come. It has come.
Okay. Just give me a minute, because shall I quickly go through the presentation? 1 minute. Let me. Yeah, I think I lost out on. I'll start from here. Okay. Yeah, is the presentation there?
Yeah, it's there.
Okay. Excuse me. There was some issue. I don't know why the meets was not working well, but right now I think it's fine. What I was saying was, this is what I was saying. You need technical skills, because this is a very important background, that foundation that I wanted. You need, when you start, you need so much of technical skills. Then in between, you need less technical skills, more conceptual skills. And when you are very senior, you will be using more of conceptual skills. And therefore, in this presentation, I would be showing you more of this than conceptual rather than the technical skills. Okay. So that's what it is. I said banking can be discussed as an institution, and from the macroeconomic point of view as an enabler, economic growth, etc., as regulations for governing the banks. But I would like to discuss it as a business. This is the most important point that I would like all of you to remember. That's why the title that I have given is the business of banking. So I will not be discussing very much about what are the regulations, etc. All these I take as given. So the banking companies are set up to do banking business with a profit motive. And therefore, banking can be discussed as So what's banking? This is what is the most important point. I think the presentation was not visible. There was some issue in sharing, but I am sure you can see it now. Remember, banking means accepting the purpose, for the purpose of lending, deposits of money from the public, deposits from the public, repayable on demand, and they can withdraw it by check, draft, or otherwise. This otherwise includes online transfer. Remember, this was enacted in 1949, and therefore this otherwise was very wisely inserted in this, so we don't have to change. Remember, banking means taking deposits which are repayable on demand, and the customer can withdraw it anytime they want. And this main purpose is to lend to the public. And therefore, in this discussion, banking means a commercial bank, not an investment bank or a private sector bank. So managing a commercial bank would essentially therefore be managing the balance sheet of the bank. So to understand it, let's start a bank. We are good so far? You can see the presentation?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Now, to understand banking business, let's start a bank. And now I'm going to assume that there are no regulation whatsoever. This is a little tough for people who are in banks or people who have been teaching banking, and for the students also. Can you have a bank without a Reserve Bank of India? Let's see why we need Reserve Bank of India, etc., etc. So remember, there are no regulations. We'll come to regulations later, because that's just the perimeter on which the banks have to work. And therefore, as we go, we'll see why Reserve Bank regulates, and we will relax this assumption and see how it affects our business. So how do you start a bank? We set up a company. These are companies called banking company. How do you set up this? Like all companies, we need a memorandum and articles of association, registration with the registrar, board of directors, etc. All of you know that. We bring in capital from promoters. Basically, banks start with the capital from the promoters, and later on they have to dilute it through IPOs. So you can think of the Kotak's problem and Yes Bank problems which are there, which are being sorted out. Now, we get money. Where do we keep the money that is raised? This is not 10 rupees or 20 rupees, so it's large. Where do we park these funds? When a company is started, the company parks these funds with a bank. But we ourselves are a bank, so we hit the first challenge that is there. So we would see this brings us to the first point, that banks also need a bank. And so we need a banker's bank, and that is the Reserve Bank of India. Right now, remember, this Reserve Bank of India is just going to be a banker's bank and nothing more. We will use this account for managing our transactions. We'll come to this a little later. We'll receive money, meaning we as a bank, Aditya Bank, let's say, receive money from the banks, from other banks, and pay to other banks. Therefore, at this point, our balance sheet is the following. You have equity, source of funds is equity. We have kept it some as cash and some in the RBI account. Then let's get down to business. So to earn interest, let's lend out money. This is we lent out some money from the RBI account. So this is the source of funds. Our balance sheet now this is cash, this is RBI account. Remember, we opened this account because we need a place or an account where we can receive money from other banks, or we can make payments to the other banks. And then we have given loans. Now, this is an earning asset. Do not forget that this is an earning asset. But how is this company different from a loan company or a traditional or indigenous money lenders? We are right now money lenders. So let's now increase our funds by borrowing, which, as you know, we call it leveraging. So when you leverage, there are three types of money that you can get. Either you accept deposits or you issue bonds. Sorry, two types. Either you accept deposits from public or you issue bonds. And therefore, our balance sheet now becomes larger. We have equity, which we had brought as owners of this bank, as promoters. Then we issued some bonds. Then we took some deposits. We'll have to see whether we need any of these, but this is the type of balance sheet. We pay interest on these two and we earn money on this. The types of deposits that we can take are fixed or term deposits. Anybody can take fixed or term deposit. There are some limitations, yes, or deposits which are withdrawable on demand. I told you I'll come back to this. Only a bank can take deposits which are withdrawable on demand, and these are called demand deposits. As long as a company does not accept or will not or promises not to take deposits which are withdrawable on demand, it remains a non-banking financial company. So remember this nomenclature. If it is a bank, has been allowed to accept deposits withdrawable on demand. We'll see why this allowed to, etc., etc. And therefore, the distinguishing feature of a bank is that they are allowed to accept deposits payable on demand. Now, this is our balance sheet. This is our basic balance sheet. Now, we have some problems. This is not yet the balance sheet. What is the problem? Let's see. So now the balance sheet, if you remember, I've changed it to demand deposits and time deposits. The rest is the same. This is earning. We pay out on this. We pay out on this. Now, the effect of the balance sheet, effect on the balance sheet or effect of accepting demand deposits is the following. We are not very sure when the depositor will withdraw money. Remember, funds are tied up in loan assets. If you go back, you will see that we raised money with deposits and we are given loans. And therefore, we have to remember this and this. The money is tied up in loan assets, which will be repaid as per the repayment schedule. They will pay their EMI. You cannot ask them to give the money as and when you want. On one hand, you have to pay the depositor as and when he or she walks in or logs in and withdraws the money. But you just cannot get this whenever you want. It will be as per what is called the repayment schedule. Therefore, banks cannot tell the depositor who wants to withdraw from our account to come later. What happens if they tell the depositor that you come later? The depositor will start shouting, screaming, and there will be a run on the bank. And therefore, the ability to pay the depositor on demand is critical for banks' stability. I'll repeat this. The ability to pay the depositor on demand as and when they want is critical for bank stability. It has become worse now because 24/7 you can operate on your account. The banker will not even know about it. And this we, of course, as most of you know or would be knowing, it's called the liquidity risk. The liquidity risk is inherent in a commercial bank. If you want to run a commercial bank, you just cannot say, I do not want liquidity risk. It is there. We will manage it. We'll see how to do. So what do? We keep sufficient cash in the vaults to pay when a customer wants to withdraw cash. But now remember, people are generally using online transfers. Okay, then what do? We keep balance in the Reserve Bank of India. Now, how much cash do we keep? How much balance do we keep with the Reserve Bank of India? Because the transfers from individual accounts goes through the Reserve Bank of India. These are what we call idle assets, and these idle assets get no cash for us. They don't earn anything. So we say very nicely, not too little, not too much. There's a lot of things is there. How much balance to be kept? RBI doesn't pay any interest on the money that we keep with the RBI account. It's only for transactions, and therefore that is also an island. The third alternative that we have is why not invest in liquid assets? Meaning, if we require cash, or if we require balance in the RBI account, we sell these assets and get money quickly. But liquid assets, because everybody wants to have liquid assets, earn less. And therefore, again, not too much, not too little, just as much as we require. Therefore, the bank's balance sheet now is transformed into these on which we pay interest, this on which is our basic business, and we have invested some amount in liquid assets. Remember, there is no RBI regulation so far. This is the basic balance sheet of a commercial bank, and whenever I teach a course, this is where we start saying that let's manage this balance sheet. A reminder, we still have not relaxed the assumption that there are no regulations. So let's manage our bank. Let's split the balance sheet into business and non-business related assets and liabilities. Business related are deposits and loans. Non-business related are liabilities, equity and bonds issued. Assets, non-business related. Why do I say non-business related? This was because we had to set up a company. This was because we thought we will raise some more funds, but we need not raise this. I'll tell you why we need not raise this. And assets are this for liquidity so far to manage the withdrawals of online withdrawals of customers, and this as liquid assets in case we need, we convert this into a balance with the Reserve Bank of India and we can draw cash from Reserve Bank of India. But the business is deposits and loans. Now, I've given you as on 31st of March, State Bank of India, a stylized balance sheet as the balance sheet that we have. Here, of course, there are other liabilities and other assets. And also, I've given you the percentage to the total. So, equity capital is 0.02% of our total liabilities or our total asset. So, 0.02% is paid up equity. Reserves is 5.3%, so about 5 to 5.5% is own funds, these two. Other liabilities are around 4%, 3 to 4%. Other assets are about 8 or 10%. This includes all the cars, the computers, etc., etc. Cash is about 5%. Just see these numbers, these three, 1, 2, and 3. 80% of our money which we have lent out comes from, or which we have utilized comes from deposits. And about half of it is demand deposits. Advances are about 60%. So this is our basic business and we call this the banking business. This, remember, is liquid assets. Why do we have 26%? Because of the SLR, RBI says you must keep it. These are some issues we can discuss later. So this plus this is called the banking book. And therefore, you will agree that as managers, we should concentrate on this and this. This is where our earnings are, as defined in the law what banking business is, and let's start with this. So decisions regarding own funds, I'll quickly go through because this is not a teaching session. This is just a taste of what the whole thing is about. How much equity capital to be brought in? Since, remember, in finance, equity is the most expensive source of funds. If it is the most expensive, we should keep it to the minimum required. Interestingly, no attention was paid to this by the regulators till adequacy norms were introduced. So there is a saying, old timers like me say that you don't need any capital if you are running your bank well. Don't get into it because there are regulations now. The question that one would raise now, which you people will find answers for, would be, would banks bring in large capital if there are no regulation? This is a very age-old thing. Why do companies keep capital? What is the benefit of that to the owners, not the outsiders? So we will look after ourselves. If we are looking after ourselves, how much capital would we be bringing? There are many questions. I would only say that some banks build up their net worth to take care of bad debts, to have stability, etc. We will move on. Bonds is a very interesting topic. Bonds would be more expensive than deposits, obviously, because they are held up. You cannot take premature repayment. They are cannot be used for your transactions, etc. So bonds would fetch a lot. These are those non-convertible debentures, as we call them, issued by banks. If it is expensive, why should we raise bonds at all? Interestingly, till adequacy norms were introduced, most banks had not issued bonds in India. Why did they start issuing after that? They started issuing bonds because it is considered as tier 2 capital and it takes care of the capital adequacy norms and regulations. So the bonds issued by banks that you see on balance sheets of banks now are basically because they are for capital requirements. They are what we call compliance. Otherwise, banks need not issue bonds at all. So we'll come to the other asset. The first asset, that's cash involved. This is idle asset, optimal level. Oh, what do we do with this? So basically, we have been doing it based on experience, but in my teaching career, discussion with others, we can do some kind of modeling and then do it. Some banks are doing that. It's a slow process. We use statistical tools to find out what would be the cash amount that is required, and going forward, because of the online transactions, we don't have to keep this. So online transactions help banks in keeping very little cash. You have to have vaults, you have to keep their security, etc., etc., etc. And you need to have arrangements to replenish cash from other banks or from the central bank or its representatives. In India, we have a very good system. You can check it out. Now, balance with the Reserve Bank of India is required for interbank transfers on behalf of customers, meaning if I transfer money to you and your bank is a different bank from mine, the transfer goes through NEFT, etc., etc. Basically, it goes through the bank's RBI account. That's where the RBI comes into the picture. RTGS and NEFT both go through this account, and also IMPS, everything, because this is the bankers keep their account with this bank, which is the banker's bank. Second one is for interbank transactions. People borrow from each other, banks borrow from each other, or they sell securities to each other, or foreign exchange transactions, etc. The RBI account is the transaction account of the banks. Liquid assets, how much to invest in liquid assets? They earn less. So as we say, optimal levels. More important is which are the liquid assets. As a general rule, sovereign debt is taken as the liquid asset. Anybody who has invested in non-sovereign assets have faced problems, but let's say we have sovereign assets. The question that should be raised, and you should find answers to this, is will banks invest in liquid assets in the absence of regulation? RBI does not want to take this chance, and therefore they have what is called the SLR regulation. Now, there is another question. Are equities liquid? Should banks invest in equities? There is a long history starting from Glass-Steagall Act, starting from the Great Depression in the US to Graham-Wiley Act, etc. I would urge all of you to go into this. In India, we have taken, as usual, a middle path and say that you can invest so much or that much, etc., etc., etc. That's what I'll just see. If anybody wants to ask a question, please unmute and ask me, because I can't see the hands raised at this time. So this is what the liquid assets is. These are the questions. Now we'll come back to the real banking business, which is taking deposits and loans. And therefore, managing these deposits, remember, this is the source of funds and this is the earning asset. These are the challenges I would like to bring your notice to. And as you go forward, you should apply all your management knowledge to this. Therefore, this deposits and loans, as I said, is called the banking book. So managing the banking business basically comes down to managing the banking book. Loans are our earning assets. We earn loan, and this is called the interest earned. In technical terms, we get most of our funds from deposits, and we have what is called the interest paid, and that is the outflow. This is expense and this is income. And therefore, we have a concept called net interest income, which is this minus this. And then if you make it for 100 rupees, or percentage, it's called the net interest margin. These are some of the terms which we will do. But let me raise some issues. How do we manage these deposits? This is where I will go a little away from the traditional way of looking at this.
So,
yeah.
question.
Yeah.
Initially, you said that bank raise equity, like promoter bringing the equity capital,
Yeah.
and they deposited it with the RBI. So,
yeah,
means they can't use that fund for lending loans or.
Yeah, they can. That was the first level that we did. Look at RBI account as of now. Or don't look at the regulations. Look at RBI account as the banker's bank account. If you have money in your account, you can always use that. It is like a current account. It is a current account of banks with the Reserve Bank of India. So they just do an online transfer. They operate on that account and transfer the money to another bank. So as of now, don't look at RBI account as anything other than a current account of the bank. You get the point?
Means they can do the business with promoters' money. Like they can means if the promoters bring in 1 crore, so they can lend it as loans to the customer and earn interest on them.
Yeah.
Means it is not necessary to accept deposit or issue bond for doing the business, like core business.
Yeah. Well, please remember one thing. That's what would have been taught in the accountancy class, basic accountancy or whatever, not management accounting, basic accounting. We have the concept of source of funds and uses of funds, right?
Yes.
Once you raise funds, now you cannot say that this much money we will use only for that, and you can't have a one-to-one mapping, especially in banking. You have a kitty in which you have raised money, it has taken there. Use that total amount that you have raised to create assets. In normal business, what you do, you buy machinery which makes a product which is sold. In banking business, what do? We raise money and we lend that money straight away. We don't have any machinery, etc. We have computers and all that. That is only a process or a facilitator that is there. This is now we are coming into what is called financial services. The processes become important, the technology becomes important, etc. But we are not producing, let's say, a toothbrush which is sold. This is the difference between a service industry and a physical product industry. So we raise funds, whether it is from equity or through issue of bonds or through deposits. The money goes into a kitty, and that kitty is called the RBI account, and we use that to give out loans. You get this point?
Okay.
So I'll proceed. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, therefore, we are going to manage deposits. What do you mean by managing? Seeing that we have customers, seeing that they keep money, seeing that they don't run away, seeing that they don't withdraw suddenly, they are happy, etc., etc. All these things would come. I have listed out some of the things. Why deposits are important? just now somebody raised this thing, can we lend out equity? Equity is expensive. Please remember, throughout your financial career or any other career, as a manager, equity is very expensive. Why do we bring in equity? We need a stable company, so we bring in equity. What about how much, etc., etc.? These are matters of study. There are papers, there are experiences, there are things, etc. But all said and done, equity is expensive, and the cheapest source of funds for a bank is deposits. Okay, so it is cheaper as compared to equity and bonds. We will raise equity to the extent we need, either for regulation or for what we feel as stability. For example, in India, 9% is the 9% of your risk-weighted assets you need to raise equity, but banks in India generally raise about 12 to 15%. They feel it is better. Now, it is debatable. I won't get into the academic part of it, but as managers, you need to get 9% of equity. Let's get 9%, not more, because this is very expensive. Bonds, as I said, deposits are cheaper than bonds, and therefore we'll issue bonds to the extent that it helps us for capital adequacy, not more, because it's expensive. Because these are the main source of funds, we need to, quote unquote, manage these well. Remember, whatever you study in management can be applied to this. Let's see how. So generally, this is referred to in banking parlance as liabilities management. So we are now splitting managing of banks into managing liabilities and managing the loans. There are different types of deposits, and this, I would like all of you to remember them as liabilities products. Remember these as products. It will help you in understanding what banks are doing, or even thinking strategically what should be done. So these are liability products. Your deposits, from now on, I'll refer to them as the liability products. So what are these liability products? Yeah.
How are bonds cheaper than equity? Like
bonds
equity is a owned capital.
Yeah, then you need to go back to your studies on cost of capital in your corporate finance class. Okay. I'll just give you the rules of thumb that we follow in finance, which is generally there. One, debt is cheaper than bonds. Debt is cheaper than capital or own funds, and in debt, bonds are more expensive than CASA deposits or other deposits. Okay. Now, why, etc., etc., it's a different subject. You go back to your corporate finance, which I'm sure you studied in the third term, if you have 3 terms, or 4th term that you would have studied there. Okay.
So, as far as I know, so it's like equity, you are not bound to pay, like you're not bound to pay returns on it.
I agree with you. I agree with what you are saying, but if you are not going to service the equity, people will sell off the equity and your company will be in doldrums. This is the one-line answer I can give you. Otherwise, there is a concept called cost of capital, which would have been covered, I'm sure, in the corporate finance class, or if it is called financial management class. Okay. If I have time, I'll get back to this question later on, because I had assumed that you would be knowing these things. Okay. Sure. Otherwise, you can send me an email. I'll send you the references that you need to know. One needs to remember that equity is the most expensive funds if you are in a long-term management. If you are fly-by-night blade company, then that's a different topic. So I'll get back to that. That's a discussion which itself will take about 15-20 minutes after you remember your classes. Okay. So let's get back to liability products. As I said, I'm not avoiding the question. If there is time, I'll get back to this, or I can, since it's online, I can always send you the readings that are there. Okay. So what are the liability products of a bank? There are term liabilities. then which are the what we know as fixed deposits and term deposits. Then we have what are called demand liabilities, which are the current account where no interest is paid, and savings account. Now remember, these two, let's say 40% of our deposits are demand liabilities and 60% are term liabilities. HDFC has about 46% term liability, demand liabilities. These two put together in India, we refer to them as CASA deposits. We pay here, banks pay from SBI pays 2.25% on this, and other banks, I think up to 6 or 7% it is pay. IDFC pays 7% on this. So let's take State Bank of India. So this is 2.25%, this is 0. If you have 50-50, we are paying something like a 1.25% interest on this. Just imagine if this is 1.25 or 1%, and here we are paying, let's say 6%. So entire deposits put together, we are paying 3%, not more than that, 3.5%. Therefore, we need to know how to manage this. That is the main thing. I'll raise some questions and I'll come back to the answers later on. We have recurring deposits, but they are part of the, partly this, partly that. This is just to help people out. So, demand deposits, very cheap, but being withdrawable on demand, they are very volatile. What I mean is that today we may have, let's say, 5,000 crores total. Tomorrow, 1,000 crores could be withdrawn. Maybe 1,000 crores could be added. We do not know. A lot of people are worried about this, calling it the asset liability mismatch, but we manage it in a different way. So that's for discussion later on. So if we have large number of accounts, the total of the, this is very important. The total of the CASA deposits may be stable. We can use statistical tools to find out what is the stable part of it, or we can do just a graphing or something. You will find that major portion, about 80% of the CASA deposits are stable. They are not going to vanish. In fact, CASA deposits of a good bank keep on increasing. And therefore, the challenge that is there to the managers is to get customers to keep stable balances. To open the bank account and to keep customers stable balances. How do we do it is the management part of it. So this is familiar to marketing students. I assume there are marketing students also here and other students who have learned marketing 1 and 2 or marketing 1. Acquiring and retaining customers is one of the major duties of the marketing department. Okay, just a minute. So why do we have, I'll raise some questions. I'll give quick answers. You will have to check out these as the year proceeds, as you start your journey into the management part of that. Why do we have different types of deposits? Is it because the Reserve Bank of India says so? No. Then why? I would only say that all these things evolved over a period of time. And I would go back to one of the basic precepts or the basic principles in marketing, that a product is bought by a customer if the product meets a felt need. And therefore, there are different needs of the customers, and we need to know what is the need met by this customer, by each product. Fixed deposits, very briefly, because you need to go into detail with it, and this is just an introduction. Very briefly, people are looking for return and a safe investment. Let me tell you, after this COVID, etc. started, and after the Yes Bank problem, fiasco, etc., and ILFS and Diwan housing, etc., the deposits of State Bank of India have really broken all records. Not for all banks, and therefore, what is it that we are looking for, and what is it that the customers is looking for? So this is what you need to remember. CASA deposits are for transactions, payments and receipts. And therefore, are customers willing to pay for this service? Not many people ask these questions. Not many practicing bankers ask this question, nor does the Reserve Bank ask this question. It's not for Reserve Bank to ask these questions. But interestingly, the State Bank of India has asked this question and has benefited by that. Let's see that a little later. So why would a person open an account with us rather than another bank? This is another question that is there. Yeah, coming back to CASA, there was a time when savings bank account interest rate was regulated by the Reserve Bank, and it had said that it should be 4%. So all banks gave 4% on savings bank interest, on savings bank balances. Then I don't remember the year, but about 4 or 5 years ago, Reserve Bank deregulated it and said banks can give whatever interest they want to on savings account. Immediately, Yes Bank, IDFC was not there. Yes Bank said, they announced that they will pay 7% interest on savings account. The question that was there, in fact, I was teaching this the day the announcement was made, and we had a discussion, and we were trying to strategize as to, if it was our bank, what should we do? Everybody felt that, just like in the case of, if they are paying 7%, then we should pay 7%, otherwise the deposits would go, etc., etc. There were very few who said, why should we, etc. And I had pointed out that since if it is a transaction, customers are not looking for interest on this. They are looking for ease of doing transaction. Okay. In that case, then there is no need to increase the interest rate. State Bank of India, being the largest bank and the largest public sector bank, decided not to increase the interest rate, and all other public sector banks followed it, which means about 70 to 80% of the banking business decided not to increase the interest rate. Interestingly, HDFC Bank did not increase, ICICI Bank did not increase, so about, let's say, 90% of the banking business banks decided no. And the deposits of these banks did not go down significantly, nor did the deposits, I'm talking of CASA deposits of Yes Bank go up. Even today, what State Bank of India has done was, from 4, they reduced it to 3.5. From 3.5, they reduced it to 2.5. Now it is 2.25%, 2.25%. That is the lowest rate that is there for savings bank in India, and that's only State Bank of India. And their deposits, CASA deposits, have not fallen. In fact, they have gone up. Therefore, that kind of underlines the customer is not looking for return, the customer is looking for transaction, and therefore comes back to some of these questions that I've raised, that acquiring and retaining, you need to study more. And mind you, this is taught in marketing. So we come to the topic, or the necessity for marketing liability products. Can we apply marketing techniques to managing deposits? You have the 4 P's and then the last 3 P's that are there. How to apply, where to apply, etc. One needs to learn. This is the mix that is there. You have the STP analysis. I don't have a slide on that, but you need to do STP analysis. You need to do segmentation. You have different products for different people. For example, there are SBI has done that. They have one interest rate for accounts, savings accounts with balances less than 1 lakh, and balances more than 1 lakh. State Bank of India had also opened a swanky branch in Hyderabad where they would look after customers, only customers who had more than 1 crore deposits. Now, it's part of segmentation, it's part of targeting. Are you positioning? Can we position this as a lifestyle product or a general product? Do we ignore the bottom of the pyramid? All these queries come into picture here, and therefore that would make the difference. So the issue that was there is, can we apply marketing techniques to managing the liability products? So we come to the loan products. Again, we have different products to meet different needs of the borrowing customers. You have retail, you have business, you have a revolving line of credit, you have bills discounting. This part now is the technical skills. This is where you learn how, where, why, etc., etc., etc. This is part of the banking or the finance part of that. Not all banks issue credit cards. Should they issue, should they not issue, etc. This is about the product. This is the technical part as well as the marketing part of that. It's like, for example, a car, what variants to issue, whom to target, etc. There, the technical side is also very important. Styling is important, etc. So managing loan assets, to whom, how much, what rate of interest to charge. Too low, we lose out on earnings. Too high, who will come to borrow from our bank if the interest rate is too high? Only those other banks do not want, and this is called I forget the technical terms. Anyway, we attract all the bad guys, and therefore, what are the risks? There is a credit risk. We may not get the money back. And what happens? Yeah, this is important. What happens if we don't get the money back? What happens is that we lose out and we have to write off. And the write-off is we lose the capital invested in this business. And that's why we say we need to have capital to take care of write-offs, this loan business. And that is, remember, we still don't have RBI regulations. I'm not talking about RBI regulation at all. Even if RBI is not there, we need capital to take care of writing off of loans. Can we manage without any write-offs? No, you cannot. It's part of the business that is there. There will be some bad apples that is there. And therefore, this is a very crucial thing from the bank's point of view. How much credit risk can we take on? This is a function of the capital that we have. We do not want to be in a position like Dewan Housing where we have to almost close down. Now again, marketing of loan. This is very interesting. We need good customers. Now, good customers, yes, credit-worthy. Good financial history, not Vijay Mallya's willful defaulters. How do we get them? And we do not want customers who will go bust, meaning this is willful default, this is non-willful default. This is a wish list that is there. Unfortunately, all other banks want to do it. Remember, all other banks want CASA customers, CASA balances. All other banks want good customers. So how do we attract good customers? Again, can we apply marketing techniques to the loan products? Now we come to, I've raised some queries in all these slides, but we will come back to the Reserve Bank of India. Why does the Reserve Bank regulate? This is part of the macroeconomics that you may have done or should have done or could read. Stability, very briefly put, stability of the banking systems. Though banks should be managing their risks, as we discussed so far, they may not, in pursuit of profit, trying to take on more risk. And remember, these are run by managers and therefore they may not take, this is called the agency problem. So one bank's mistakes may jeopardize the whole system. Okay, this is briefly the reason why they do. There are two more reasons. I won't get into the macroeconomics part of that. What are these regulations? Very briefly, we have capital adequacy, liquidity ratios, liquidity in the form of CRR, in the form of SLR, and credit risk in the form of exposure norms. So you will have to know all these things. These are the perimeters, as I said, or the constraints. You have heard of optimization issues. So we have to optimize our profit or earnings with these constraints. And therefore, this is the other side of it. So banks, what are they doing? They are doing CASA accounts, which is the backbone of the payment system. Remember, whether it is Paytm or this account or that account, ultimately, there should be money in one of your bank accounts. Okay. And banks have a large network. They have customers both on the buying side, on the seller side. They have vaults to keep cash. Therefore, they can leverage on all these things and offer allied services, which are called fee earning or non-fund based products. Fee products or non-fund based products. Basically, these are the products that are there, and these earn fees. So in addition to managing the bank book, we would have to manage this. Again, same thing. Why would they come to us? Is it easy, etc., 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 etc. Then we have the banks are in the business of managing the assets because it is part of their investments, and they provide foreign exchange transactions or services to the customers. So the bank manage huge portfolio of bonds and can invest in capital markets and meet the foreign exchange requirements of customers. So the banks can leverage on this also. So they have great expertise in the financial market. Let's start from here. So they can trade in this. This is called treasury profit or other income. When I say trade, it is called own account trade. And we use the word trade for speculation in this market. So the banks can speculate in this market and make money. This is an additional other income that is called or treasury profits. They can also offer treasury products to their customers to manage their forex needs, to manage their risk. Now, this has become absolutely important, and there is a huge market for treasury products. A lot of companies need it. There's a lot of misunderstanding, and a lot of companies, you can help them as banking. Again, you just don't get customers unless you market this. There's a big challenge that is there because it's not very well understood either by the bank people or by the customers that are there. Now, this is the last slide. I'll throw this open for discussion later on. I think it is, yeah, it's about 12:35. Going ahead. See, I have discussed the bank balance sheet, where you should focus on, the issues that are there, and the fact that it is not just, a finance thing that is there. Yes, finance is the base. You need to acquire customers. More important, you need to retain customers. Can we build a loyalty? Can we charge more and the customers remain with us? All these things have to be considered. IT has to be considered because it's the process part of it. Now, most important, everybody should understand, meaning is this. All banks are offering all the products. They have always done that. It is always like that. It is like a toothbrush these days. It's not that people don't have toothbrushes. It's not that there's one brand. What do? Therefore, we used to call it Me Too products. I don't know what it's called now. So banks are essentially selling Me Too products. This is the biggest challenge. Therefore, can we provide, please note these questions. Can we provide a great service, great experience, enjoyable experience, so that they will stay with us even though our rate of interest is lower? One is, of course, stability, safety. That is where public sectors score over the others. That's what I said. I told you the story about the SBI experimentation with this savings rate interest. In fact, the challenge question I normally ask students, because they have fresh mind, is that can we offer say 1% on savings account? If we offer 1% or if we reduce the interest rate by 1%, would customers move out? That is one question. How do we make them stay with us is the second challenge. And the third challenge is, since we are saving X amount of money, let's say, which is huge, we are saving 100 basis points on payment of interest as expense. Can we use 50 basis points to make them happy? So most banks are doing it through credit cards, some cashback, some this, some that, etc. But everybody is doing it. So you people will have to come out with new ideas. How to make a customer feel that this is a great place. I don't mind paying 50 basis points, or I don't mind paying getting 50 basis points less. So, for example, when my son wanted to take a housing loan, the preference was HDFC Bank because they came, they sat down, they did this, etc., and they gave a decision very quickly. But the rate of interest was, I think, 100 basis points higher. So that is for the loans. Are we able to attract good customers even if our rates are higher? This is a question which can have many opinions, but it is a very important question to all banks that are there. Therefore, this is the last point that I would like to. Can we attract customers willing to pay for the service, or what marketing people call the delightful experience, and more important, retain them? That's the last slide. I can go on and on, but could you, I'm open to questions. And Dr. Sunil, yeah. Let me see if any hands have been raised. No hands have been raised. All good.
Hello, sir. Can I ask some question?
Sure.
So my question is that, as you said, the write-off of the bad debts is important for the banks. But as of now, there are many banks who have a lot of defaulters with them, and the amount is like is more than 50,000 crores for some particular banks also. So do you think the bank can handle this kind of defaulters, and with the present market condition, or the bubble is going to burst like how it happened in 2008?
Yeah. Okay. I will give you two answers or two parts. My answer to your question will be in two parts.
Yes, sir.
The first part is directly answering your question. This is now firefighting that is going on. Okay. It is called NPA management. It is a heady mixture because Reserve Bank says do this, do that. Then we have the management saying do this. Then somebody comes and CBI comes and says that why did this happen? Why did that happen? That is one part of that. Banks have experience in managing NPAs. There are some techniques. There are you have ARCs. You can sell off the loan. You can coerce them, or you can do many things. Okay. In fact, most banks have provided for this. You make provisions from your profit when you think that the loans are going bad. That is part of the maintenance that is there.
Yes.
So that is called NPA management, how it should be done, what are the laws, regulations, etc. That part of it, I'll end my answer by saying that unfortunately in India, the legal system is time consuming since till the legal reforms are done and it becomes easier and people are afraid, they will continue to do what is called willful default. The green shoots in this area are the IBC, Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, and people are afraid and of losing their businesses, and there's a huge recovery because of the IBC.
Okay.
But I'll come to the second part of this thing. I would like you people to concentrate more, not on firefighting, but on avoiding firefighting. In the sense, how to do how to do an appraisal for a loan, how to generate business, how to attract good customers, and lastly, how to leverage on the technology that you have. Technology can be a very great enabler. I'll give you one thing that was done by OBC where I am associated. One startup company came and sold the idea to them that we will generate the leads and send them to you. And every lead sent, you pay so much. Then these people got into an agreement with them, had a discussion. See, what is required when a customer comes to the bank for a loan? A, his identity, which are called KYC norms. Okay. So one, KYC norms, meaning various documents that are required. The second one is his balance sheet, audited balance sheet, etc., etc. Third one is the analysis of the balance sheet. These days, everything is computerized. You just put in the number, you get it very quickly. And then you start looking at it. So the banking knowledge or the management's input comes in, or the role comes in after this basic knowledge, basic process is done. So they told them, okay, you send us all this after doing KYC. After checking out, getting the balance sheets, after putting them in a particular format and telling us the ratios, etc., then we will see. They got into it, they got the leads. See, this generation of these leads is using technology. So you don't have to go there, the customer doesn't have to come. All those customers who don't have the required level, etc., are filtered out. And they benefited a lot on that. That was one successful experiment that I had written. As there is no limit to such imagination or leveraging, etc., you people should, what shall I say? The IT people who know banking, if you are dual specialization, if you are doing finance and IT, you get into how this can be done, etc. Because there is a need for new ideas now, and people are willing to pay for that. The reason why companies hire MBAs is not to tell them how to manage NPAs, how to do compliance. These are given, these are done. There are separate experts for that. The reason why people hire young minds who have a good knowledge of all these things is because you are the guys who know what is to be known in marketing, you know what is to be known in IT, you know what is to be known in finance, you know how a bank works, etc. You can come out with solutions. So the second one was an uncalled for, but that is also part of the answer that is there. Okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions?
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, sir. In continuation to the answer which you have given, this is Professor Namrata here. Just to, I just want you to throw light on one aspect of banking, since you were talking about bankruptcy code and you were talking about NPA management. So a recent case has happened with HTL builders, and there are a lot of people who would have bought home loans from different banks. So how has the bank taken these? So maybe they would have done slab payments. So how does a bank take this? Will it be considered as NPA if the people who have bought homes they stop paying, or will the bank wait for the bankruptcy decision to happen? So what is your take on this?
My answer to that is, again, you should remember, I was a banker. I have 15 years. I am a teacher. My mind is whirling around with what can be done, etc. So I'll answer it in the following way. There is a process which is to be followed. The people have to be part of that group of creditors, etc., etc. That process is going on, as you are aware of it. But as far as the NPA is concerned, there are very specific rules by the Reserve Bank of India. That is, if there is a installment not paid in the for 90 days, the 90 days rule applies there, and it has to be marked as NPA, and before you mark it as NPA, you have SMA 1, SMA 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. All those things. I'm not very good in compliance. So as far as making it an NPA, there is no discussion about it. Once you make it an NPA, you have to make provision, no discussion about it. You know, I was a RBI inspector at one point of time. I still don't understand why there are discussions about it. It has to be done. It's like, yeah, I live in Gurgaon. It's in Haryana. There is normally people drive in any left side, right side, middle side, any side. But if you go to the US, there's no discussion about it. You have to drive on the right side. So if there is a very specific regulation, there should not be any discussion about it. And therefore, first part, the process is evolving, IBC process is evolving, and there are a lot of things that have to be sorted out. As far as banks are concerned, NPA norms are clear. It has to be an NPA, and they have to provide for, make provisions for all this as per the rule. The only thing that has happened is the moratorium that bank has given, Reserve Bank has given. Please look at the moratorium as a regulatory forbearance rather than anything else. There was one more point which I think I missed out. Is there anything?
No, thank you, sir. That was a very beautiful answer. I think I just tried to link your answer with one of the recent cases for every student to understand how does it go in the market. Thank you so much for this.
Professor Amrita, it is a little complicated because you see, I think recent one, if you see the regulations for housing finance companies, they have said that the housing finance companies can either finance the developer or finance the house buyer.
Right.
I am very surprised that this had not been caught on. I'm an ex-RBI person, so I used to say, how have they missed it out? Because
actually, the classic case here is that there are a lot of banks like PNC, there HDFC, who have lended money to both the builder as well as the home buyer.
Absolutely.
So it's a double debt. It's a double debt, and the debt levels are very high. So now they know that the money is not flowing from the builder. So they are trying to get the most of the money from the buyer because else you will become a defaulter. So you will be caught in CIBIL. So
yeah, that is the problem. But then as far as banks are concerned, then they have to take a very strict thing. Now, all these things, to take it to a different level, makes me think or believe that banks have not played a very responsible role in that. Because they were, pursuing business without understanding that there could be double financing. The second one is that all these companies, let's say they have been sincere and not siphoned off the money, but they've put all this extra money they had into land bank, which is an illiquid asset. So they are having asset liability mismatches, they are having liquidity problems, and extreme liquidity problem leads to insolvency. So banks have forgotten one thing, that they need to be very careful when they lend. And banks are partners of their customers. This is how the Yes Bank had articulated it at one point when it started and all that. So if you are a partner of that, you should know everything what they are doing. And if a company is not willing to let you into what they are doing, you can ask for documents, understand and study. And if you're not willing to do that, don't get into this business. So that was a little more information, Professor Amrita.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Pleasure hearing you.
Any other question?
Sir, can you throw some light on this moratorium period, like how adversely it would be affecting the banking sector if the High Court doesn't give an answer?
Yeah, you see, these are very extraordinary circumstances. And remember, all planning can be done. You can have a bad case scenario, optimistic scenario, etc. You can have simulations for different scenarios and you can prepare for them. But you cannot prepare for catastrophe. This was a very unusual, unplanned, could not be planned, etc., etc. So this is a background. In this background, what happens is that some of the people may lose. I'm talking of retail and business separately. In the retail segment, some people may lose their jobs. Some people may have a job cut. Job cut has become very widely practiced by companies because they also don't have cash flows coming in. So everybody is struggling. Now, if an individual has taken housing loan or a car loan or something, and let's say a job cut, salary cut is there, they may not be able to service the loan or pay the EMI. Then it has a ripple effect. Then it becomes an NPA, as Professor Amrita had pointed out. And once it becomes an NPA, you cannot take into account the accrual interest as part of your income. Then you have to provide for it. It's a double whammy there, and then you get into trouble. So the banks get into trouble. Now, if banks have a problem, then the financial system would be affected, etc. Taking all this into account, the Reserve Bank of India said that if a person does not pay for 90 days or for the next 3 months or the next 3 installments or EMI, don't consider it as NPA. This was what was the meaning of the moratorium that was there, but they used the word moratorium. This was misinterpreted by many people, thinking that the EMI due in, say, April, May, June need not be paid. You start off paying from July, not realizing that interest would be charged for this period. Not only interest charged for this period, interest on the interest due in April, May, June would also be charged. So it becomes a compounding interest. And when they realize that, somebody has gone to the court and all that kind of thing. But banks just cannot give a loan and say, don't pay me for some time without paying interest. So this is the whole scenario of the moratorium that was there. So to sum it up, the main thing that was there was the Reserve Bank of India gave what is called regulatory forbearance, saying that do not consider it as NPA and save the banks from the ripple effect of the loans or being marked as NPAs. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, okay. But don't you think that RBI is striking too much norms? Like SBI is doing good as in banking sector, but they are providing, like they're forcing SBI to merge with Yes Bank. So they are just losing the balance sheet.
Well, you see, I must be about 3 times your age, so I can say a lot of things which you should not be saying. Yes, I agree with you. There is a different opinion. There are different groups of people. Some feel that RBI should do a lot of regulation. Some people feel that there should not be any regulation. I believe in RBI should not get into micro regulation. And I have been in the Reserve Bank, so I know what they are doing. Now, that kind of discussion I can have only if you have worked, let's say, for about 15, 20 years and you're into, you have read a lot of diverse views on this.
So just your opinion.
No, you see, what happens is after you reach a certain level, you can afford to have very strong views. Each view has plus and minus in that. But let me assure you one thing, having worked in a commercial bank and the Reserve Bank and in the market and having taught and having read, etc., that it's doing a good job. And incidentally, our financial system is one of the safest and stable systems in the world. Do you think anybody ever thinks of whether a bank is safe or not? Only recently, because of Yes Bank problem and the other cooperative bank problem, that was people have thought of, and I think they have now forgotten because the Yes Bank deposits have not fallen so significantly, or there's no run on the bank, etc., because there's a lot of faith in the Reserve Bank of India taking appropriate and timely action in that. Yes, the experts may differ, so I will reserve my comments on this or an elaborate answer for this. Okay. Any question? Yes, ma'am.
Sir.
Yeah, I think we have 5 minutes.
Yeah, Vineet, let this be the last question. Yeah, Vineet.
So my question is, when we consider private sector banks, they provide a good service in comparison to public sector banks. Still, people are more trust towards public sector bank. Then, as a private sector bank, how we can improve to retain those customers?
Okay. First of all, let me first disabuse you of the feeling that private sector banks provide good service. Now, what is good service? As you learn various electives, you will know what is good service. Yes, if you look from the customer's point of view, is it the ease of transaction? Is it the higher rate of interest? Or my favorite is, after seeing all the technology, all these kind of things, is dispute resolution. Because all of us are doing transactions online, even loans are getting online, etc. All of us have used Amazon, all of us have used other online this thing. We are all happy. If there is discount, we are happy. If there's cashback, we are happy. But we are extremely unhappy when things go wrong. And what happens? You call up a number, they'll say you hold on, press this number, press that number. So nobody is willing to chat, nobody is willing to listen. Similarly, remember, though funds are involved, banking is a service. And if dispute resolutions are not quick, then you can be sure that the customer is dissatisfied and angry about it. And they will go and tell 100 people. This is called behavioral finance. In behavioral finance, there are certain heuristics. One of them is that when they are happy, they are very happy. They sit quiet. But when they are sad, they tell at least 5 people, and whatever. It's bad mouthing the whole thing. So I would not say that private sector can be thought of as giving good service. For example, I have an account with State Bank of India. I have an account with HDFC Bank. Now, dealing with HDFC Bank, I deal with chatbots, I deal with FAQs and things like that. But State Bank of India, I can go to the bank and start shouting. Somebody will come and say, Bauji, baith jao, garam kyun ho rahe ho, this, that, etc. So I would not make a sweeping remark that private sector is definitely better than public sector. This is regarding service. Now go back to the slides. I said there are 2 types of deposits. One is the fixed deposit and the other one is the CASA account. Now in a savings bank account, how much should you keep? The balance that you would keep would be as required for your monthly transactions, not more. If you are a little careful with your money, you would put that money in a fixed deposit. What people are worried is safety is prime importance for a fixed deposit. Number 1 importance. Second is the rate of interest. In the case of transactions account, CASA accounts, the website, the ease of working on the website, the way it works, and dispute resolutions become very important in that. This is my experience, and I've read papers, I've seen people, I've talked to people, but this is what is there. And therefore, I will conclude the whole, give you the gist of it. People seem to be putting fixed deposits in public sector banks basically because they are government owned and they won't go under. At the same time, people like to have savings accounts, let's say with HDFC, etc. Why? It comes bundled with the credit card, it comes bundled with a relationship manager, and the website is very easy, etc. At the same time, SBI is giving a very big run for the HDFC, even in CASA accounts. I think 1 minute left.
Thank you, sir.
I think that was the last question. Vineet, are you okay?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. So I think,
anyway, 1 minute, Dr. Sunita. Anyway, my email address is very easy. It's bhusnurmath@gmail.com. Anybody who wants anything, welcome. I would love to know what the younger minds think about. I will definitely respond to that. And
so in fact, that's really kind of you because you're so approachable I mean, that builds the confidence of, I'm sure, the students and the faculty members that for any queries related to the banking sector, I mean, you would just be the right person that who could actually resolve those queries for them. First and foremost, my heartfelt gratitude for spending your valuable morning with us, because I know you're extremely busy with lots of commitments, and you have been able to take your time out to give the overview of how a person is supposed to look at a bank in terms of making money, and how is it that a person needs to look at the different aspects of managing a commercial bank. What I really liked about your entire session was the tips that you have given for the students. At an entry level, they need to bother themselves about loan appraisals. So yes, they need to know how to, decide which are who are going to be the people who are the right customers, where the loans have to be disbursed. How to generate business, that's a very important critical aspect, because after joining a bank, people should not think, that that's not a part of their job profile, because that's the basic reason why they exist there in the bank. And attracting good customers using technology, I think these were a few takeaways which these young minds can take, and they can start, thinking along those lines, in addition to everything that you have summed up beautifully about managing a commercial bank. So I think once again, on behalf of all the students and the faculty members present here, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and my apologies. Somehow I couldn't share the upload the PPT, and it was great because people are thinking. I must congratulate you on the fact that the students seem to be aware of what are the things happening, and they are thinking. So thank you very much. I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.